I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. Now, here's a video of the MAGA fraud George Santos trying to run away from cameras as he's heading in the tunnel in the Capitol building. Here, play this clip.
Do you feel like you're qualified to serve in this Congress right now? How do you hope your constituents can trust you, even though that you've misrepresented your biography to them?
What's your response to calls for a House ethics investigation by Nick Lolota?
Do you have any statements about your campaign and how you hope to govern? Do you hope to carry out your full term?
What can you say to reassure your constituents that you'll do what you said you were going to do on the campaign trail, given the concerns that have come up about statements you've made in the last few months?
Okay, now here's George Santos running away from cameras and the press as he's trying to find his office in the Capitol building. Play this clip.
Do you have any statements to your constituents? Do you have any statements to your constituents?
Santos, are you copying your position? Are you copying your position, sir? Sir, are you copying your position? Sir.
Any comments on the protest happening outside of your office?
Okay, now here is George Santos at the vote for Speaker of the House, where Kevin McCarthy failed to secure the speakership on Tuesday after 3 roll call votes. The first time this has happened since 1923. George Santos voted yes, but first let's play the clip of George Santos voting in favor of Kevin McCarthy. Play the clip.
Santos, McCarthy, Sarbanes, Jeffries.
Okay, now here is a video of George Santos picking his nose and rolling a booger into a little ball while, sorry, I did the hand gesture, rolling his booger into a little ball while nobody wants to be associated or no one wants to be near him, I guess, other than Kevin McCarthy. Play the clip. Is there anyone who is more of an archetype of who the Republican Party is right now than George Santos? Someone who's just a complete fraud, someone who is just a complete traitor, someone who is just completely weird. All of that being combined for a trifecta, including someone who does not support our Constitution, someone who wants to undermine our government at each and every turn. And we have someone in George Santos also who we learned the day before is under investigation, not just by local, state, and federal prosecutors in the United States, but we also learned that authorities in Brazil, prosecutors in Rio de Janeiro, have reopened up their criminal case against George Santos because in 2008, George Santos's mother, you want to believe all the George Santos stories, but his actual mother was a caretaker for somebody elderly in Brazil. And apparently, George Santos, what he had, I think, admitted to Brazilian authorities that he did, is he had stolen the checkbook of the elderly individual who his mother was taking care of so he can buy himself shoes and other clothing. He then fled Brazil. He admitted to this in Brazil, apparently. He then fled Brazil to the United States. Like, it's unclear if Santos is even a United States citizen. It's unclear if his name is even George Santos. We'll just accept that it's George Santos, but he's gone by all these different aliases. And the Brazilian authorities couldn't identify and find him until all of these stories about George Santos have now been made public, and the Brazilian prosecutor said, no, you are wanted. You fled our jurisdiction, and we are criminally prosecuting you now for doing that as well. So not only do you have all of the American prosecutors at all the different levels, you now have an international criminal investigation of George Santos as well. And George Santos just sitting there voting for Kevin McCarthy, picking his nose and rolling his boogers and running away from the media. Again, it is a perfect reflection of all aspects of who MAGA Republicans are, what they don't stand for, why it is that we can't have a deranged and weird and despicable political party like this, which itself is a reflection of Donald Trump. I mean, you have someone like Donald Trump who lies about everything. Just look recently. Donald Trump said, I paid millions of dollars in my taxes and I'm happy to show it to you. Well, he refuses to show the taxes. It turns out he did not pay millions of dollars. He paid no taxes. He received tax refunds. He basically stole from people. He claims he made charitable donations, and the tax returns show in 2020, for example, no charitable donations at all. So just like writing fake checks as well, and having his press secretary just holding up the check with his signature that was not actually sent, just completely fraud and phony as well. Then everything Donald Trump's done his entire career has been a complete fraud. Heck, his organization, the Trump organization, was just convicted on 17 felony counts of fraud in front of a New York jury in a prosecution by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. So where you have such a corrosive and disgusting and traitorous cult leader that now runs the political party, which itself is the MAGA Republican cult, is there any surprise that you get people like George Santos doing what he's doing there and too cowardly to even speak to the media? I mean, is he going to do that every day? Because I think the media is going to stand there every day outside his office and say, are you going to resign? What in the world are you doing? And then you have Kevin McCarthy. Who fails to call that out. And as I've said before on the MeidasTouch podcast, and by the way, subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast wherever you get podcasts available. If you can't look at George Santos and say, bad, no, you should resign. If you can't look at insurrection and say, bad, insurrection, bad. If you can't look at a global pandemic and say, this is something we need to take seriously. If you can't look at an election and say, in our democracy, we need free and fair elections, and we need to support the peaceful transfer of power, and we should not support election denialism. If you can't look at conspiracy theories and election denialism and QAnon and say, bad QAnon, if you can't do that, you don't deserve to be anywhere close to a position of leadership or a position that has control and power over Americans' lives or over anybody's lives as well. I mean, you just think about it. Go back to even in Georgia. I mean, you put up candidates like Herschel Walker. It's just like a Santos. It's in some degree, Santos is even worse than that. But you think about all of this that's going on right now, the complete disarray in the MAGA Republican Party. And it ultimately, to me, you want to trace it back, it really goes in one direction. And the one direction it goes back to is that they've completely capitulated to Donald Trump. They've allowed Trump and MAGAism and Trumpism to completely capture what the Republican Party is today. And so they go on their right-wing media networks. They go on Fox. They talk about the green M&Ms and Disney's too woke, and their anger is that too woke Disney. And they focus on Dr. Seuss this and Mr. Potato Head that. And they get really angry about pronouns, and they go, pronouns. This pronouns, we must deal with pronouns. And they rail against the American military. They say the United States military is too woke because it's diverse and has all different types of people associated with it. It's too woke. They go, oh, we got to support Kim Jong-un. We're in romantic relationships with Kim Jong-un. These are things that they say, you know, when you have a party that's so unserious like that, and so wannabe strongmen, fascists, and you compare it, we have one major political party today we have that supports democracy, that acts like adults. Do I agree with Democrats on all issues? No, I don't agree with them on all issues. It'd be weird if I agree with them on all issues, but I know that there are adults in the room who are trying to address problems and trying to find solutions to the problems in healthcare, in education, in jobs, in infrastructure, bringing manufacturing jobs, helping our veterans, focusing on helping and making sure that a woman has the right to control her own body and people can marry who they love without MAGA Republicans jumping in the mix and arresting you and all of that. Like, let's be real. Let's focus on real issues here. And we need to stop with the media legitimizing this MAGA Republican Party like they're like this is legitimate political discourse. Call them extremists, call them fascists, call them out, and show them George Santos picking his nose on the House floor, rolling his booger into a little ball as that fraudulent traitor votes for another fraudulent traitor, Kevin McCarthy. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers thanks to your support. Please hit the subscribe button. And in addition, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas.
Our blue wall stopped the red wave and election deniers got denied election. That's why we're celebrating with the new Democracy Prevails team. We've got lots of work to do, but we should all be proud that when democracy was tested, democracy prevailed. You've earned this. Don't wait. Get yours right now at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.